Welcome to Founder Led, where we sit down with some of the sharpest minds in the staffing and recruitment industry. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Growth Engine, a content agency that works with established recruitment firms, helping them grow their visibility, authority, and ultimately their business from LinkedIn. So join over 40 businesses using our proven thought leadership and content systems to grow a predictable lead engine and high intent retained searches requiring just 1 hour per week from the executives and CEOs. With that, I would love to introduce our guest for the episode today. Today we have George Randle, who's the managing partner at Randall Partners, an executive retained search firm. George, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, George, when we initially started talking, I knew we had to have you on given your wealth of experience. We'd love to start off with, the human side of your work. You've worked with thousands of leaders now, placed thousands of leaders at companies from private equity, executives to CEOs. What originally drew you into the world of talent and executive search?
Well, I always wanted to figure that out because I enlisted in the Army to pay my way through school and became an officer, did about 9 years active duty, and then decided to join the corporate world. And somehow I ended up in talent acquisition. I guess nobody raises their hand and says, hey, I want to grow up to be a recruiter. I want to grow up to be an executive search. But a light bulb really went off, and I realized the value of building great teams. And that really was the common denominator between my time, leading platoons or company command in the Army, and then, helping people build great teams in corporate America.
And I know something you really specialize in is the science behind great hiring. So I'd love if you can spend a bit of time talking about the Hogan leadership assessments. And what are some of the surprising insights that you've uncovered that are predictive of someone being successfully placed and retained at a company? And what are other learnings that you've gotten from these assessments?
Yeah, let me digress or get ahead of the topic just a little bit. The reason that I started using Hogan years ago was, look, I've got thousands of hires under my belt. I can't even count the number of interviews that I've done. And, and one of the things that I put in the book that I wrote is you can't see talent. And so even though I'm a very well-trained interviewer with 100,000 reps of interviewing, there are always going to be those people that interview very, very well. Likability may come in, you're finding reasons to say yes to them. But, even with my level of experience, I want to get it right. I've got to get it right for the client. So I came into the Hogan, and the Hogan basically does three things. It measures your values, how you wake up on a Saturday morning, what motivates you, what drives you. It measures personality. And then it talks about one thing that many other tests don't, which are what are called derailers. Or sometimes the dark side of personality is how Hogan says it, which means basically, when you're under stress, you're uncertain, you have too much on your plate, be that personal or professional, what counterproductive behaviors are going to show themselves, when those moments hit? Because look, when we're all in the zone, we're all doing great. But it's when stress and how we react to stress, how we operate, how we lead, how we execute, how we decide. Those are the things that come out in the Hogan. So I can find out from the Hogan a myriad of different things. And one great thing is the Hogan is indexed to executive profiles as well. So you can look at a CFO, a chief marketing officer, a CEO, COO. You can just go down the list. And you can go by industry as well. But it will show you, let's say, a sales role. So depending upon the role, there's all kinds of combinations. And just one last example. As CFO, you're going to want to be very detail oriented, high on prudence, lower on risk taking. Whereas on a salesperson or somebody like that, you may want higher risk taking. So it shows you all these things in a person, they're kind of their human DNA. But then, the person who's the Hogan interpreter or trained, certified specialist like me has to adapt it to the role. And it helps you with the interview. It brings the resume to life, really how they've done things. And then it allows you to make a better fit.
Okay. And then how would you work with the hiring manager or the executives that are like placing these executives at the company? So let's just say the CEO is responsible to bring in a CFO, right? Or a chief revenue officer. At what point would you run this assessment? Does it start before the interviews? And how would you kind of like weave it into the overall interview process?
Well, it usually comes at the end, and what I recommend is if you're really, really good on search, you have 2 to 3, maybe 4 people that your client really, really likes and is bringing in kind of for the final round of interviews. And that's where we would insert the Hogan at that point. Because certainly, you can go through 20 or 30 different people for different reasons, but you really want to use it for your final 4. But to use the Hogan effectively, I want to make sure at the beginning of the process, while we insert the Hogan at the end, what is the growth thesis of this company? What does that team look like? Is this a reconstruction or is this a rehab project? Is this an acquisition? Is it going to involve divestitures? What is the growth thesis? What are the other successful profiles in the company? So that when I do get that, I've got the role, I've got the culture, I've got the mission, I've got the growth thesis, and it allows me to make, with my behavioral interviewing and members of my team, plus the data set from Hogan, you really get a clear picture and you can brief the client on this is how they're going to be in your environment. And it also allows them a great deal of latitude. Maybe they just need somebody that's going to come in and do incremental growth and maintain excellence. Or maybe this is a person who's got to do a reclamation project where you've got a couple dumpster fires and you really have to reestablish the culture.
Yeah.
Who is the right A player to do that?
Yeah, I loved that idea that the company environment, that culture is so important to make sure that an A player can thrive at the company, right? You gave this great analogy of using Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes to show how even A players can fail in the wrong environment and how they are both successful because the environment is supportive and conducive to their unique gifts and capabilities to contribute to the team. And so maybe how can companies better define what success looks like and have greater awareness for their own culture and environment to make sure that you have a greater fit with these A players that are coming in, but just make sure you pick the right one that has the right fit for that environment?
Well, I define kind of the culture of a firm as the sum total or lack thereof of the leadership behaviors of the C-suite. So I want to understand, number one, how does the C-suite team work together? Or if this is a direct of a C-suite, how does this team interface with the rest of the company? Who do they collaborate with? Who are they dependent upon? I want to know about their top performers. I'll ask them questions about what makes your top performers so good. What kind of a player? And then you kind of combine that with the growth thesis. And, another example, and I don't want it to be egotistical, but it happened to me. And I went into a cybersecurity firm where, I asked them to define success. And so I said, look, at the end of 1 year, if you could wave a magic wand, what will this person have accomplished? And what obstacles are in the way of accomplishing that this candidate, or in my case, I am going to have to overcome? They had gone through 5 people previously in my role, and what they had been looking for was somebody basically who could turn the cranks into function, keep the wheels on the bus, keep it rolling. But what they really needed was somebody that knew how to rebuild from scratch. And so where 4 other people had not done well, it was the right environment for me because I wanted something to fix. That's where I excelled, was getting people aligned around a mission, aligned around a specific mantra and, cultural values, and then driving them forward. But really, to answer your question, it's understanding what do they need to do, what is success, and what obstacles might be in the way. And sometimes, if I'm replacing someone, I want to know, why didn't they succeed? What held them back? What trait did they not have enough of or not at all? And all of those things go into the picture of picking the right person, or at least presenting the right person and making a recommendation so the company can make the best hire possible.
Yeah, wow. That is such a thoughtful approach. And I'd imagine most executives just in the frenzy of running a business and making sure that they perform successfully and develop their own teams, they might not be as thoughtful and considered around answering all of these questions around, what does that, 1 year anniversary look like if it's going to be a home run success for that person? What might be a failure? Why did the previous person, why were they not successful in their role, in their words, as well as like based on a 360 analysis, maybe from the people that worked with them. So what's your sense? Like, are folks generally like pretty self-aware around some of these questions, or do you feel like you need to do quite a bit of like education to build that up?
Well, I think the number one thing that companies have to say is, why are they attractive? And really cutting it short, there's probably a million things that I could recommend. But there's one core thing that I always go to. When you and I join a firm or want to join a firm, it's building our own careers. So I want the executives, whether it's on their landing pages or somewhere, to talk about their dedication to investing in their people's growth and creating what I call a legacy of leadership. And I'm also looking for that when I talk to companies. How invested are you in improving? And I have a special question I ask for that. But I think ultimately a candidate is always, even though they're selling themselves, they're always going to want to get to that part of what's in it for me. And if the company recognizes what they can give to the people that they select, that's the thing they're going to buy. Now, it might be a very, very well-known brand. That's great. And that cachet may be attractive. But ultimately, it's what are they going to get out of to advance their own careers while contributing their value to the company. That's what you need to be selling.
Okay. And then on the flip side, what can leaders do and candidates do to better position themselves? Starting with the LinkedIn profile, is it publishing content to really showcase their experience and successes? How can they sort of cut above the competition?
Well, we kind of touched on the company side. And, if the companies are going to do pages or they're going to do, there's branding for any company, but a lot of companies make the mistake of not investing in talent branding. One, you're selling your product and your service and what it's going to do for you, your customers, your business, etc. But they don't spend enough time in talent branding. Who are we? What do our people, what does our tribe look like? What do we do together? And I don't call it family, I call it a tribe. On the candidate side, it isn't necessarily posting more things, but I find on LinkedIn the thing that I'm finding on resumes, and I have for 25 years consistently, and that is a lot of what you were responsible for. Hey, here's the scope of my work. This is what I did. How did you make that company, that team, that department, that product better? Because you were there. And you need to be putting that, helped increase revenue 15%, led our net promoter score to a 15% jump in 1 year. Simple things like that quantify rather than just simply qualify what they've done at the organization.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So now let's kind of shift gears a bit and talk about broader industry trends and where you see the future of hiring, talent development. We're in a world where we need to do more with less. There's an increased pressure on profitability. And so let's talk about like the human element in the age of AI. You mentioned that, with AI and a lot of these screening and automation tools, there's an increased need for humans, like the recruiters and the human touch, to be there to conduct some of these assessments that you talked about, but also bring their years of pattern recognition and discernment. So how do you see technology, reshaping executive search over the next 1, 2, 3, 5+ years?
Well, I think AI is going to be a benefit in a couple ways. Number one, it's going to be a benefit to companies. If you're not AI forward in your business or finding ways that you can use AI in your business, I think you're starting to get behind the power curve faster, faster and faster, or further and further rather. But on the company side, it also can help you in the leadership and development, talent development, L&D, whatever department you call it, to help start analyzing all of the top performers in your company and coming up an easier way of coming up with a success profile of what you should be hiring. I think that's going to help a lot. On the candidate side, to your point, resumes have now gotten about this far apart. If you're good with ChatGPT or any, of course that's, what most people know, but there's so many great tools out there. The resumes get closer and closer and closer. And so the AI systems that are sorting them are putting very like resumes together. So you need a talent acquisition specialist, an executive search specialist to understand, okay, those are only the table stakes that we're bringing. AI is not going to be able to pick up the personality from a resume. They're just not. So that's where you're going to need a recruiter who is a student of the business, who understands the culture, understands what's missing, what's needed, what the person's looking for, what they will hire, and how to present those candidates and tell the story in a way that the hiring manager knows that they have a very well-qualified candidate on the table stakes, but also in the personality fit.
Okay. Yeah, and I know you've written about this quite a bit. You have a best-selling book on the talent war. So it would be helpful if you can talk about, if we see that talent is truly going to be a competitive advantage in the future as technology commoditizes, as AI commoditizes technology, information, knowledge, every individual is going to have increasing leverage. And so it's like, it sounds like it's going to be these, small but mighty and cohesive teams that are going to be building and really differentiating and winning. So yeah, based on the book that you've written, can you talk a bit about talent as being the ultimate advantage and how companies can really think about that?
Well, we wrote the book really before the age of AI, right on the cusp of it. We got started writing it. But at the end of the day, one of the traits that we emphasized very strongly was teamability, and the other was adaptability. That you have to see that in your people because business is changing at a speed that we've never seen before. So you may not be a person who's smart with AI as an example, but you have to be smart to be thinking, what can AI do for you? What are the capabilities of AI and how does it apply to my function? So I don't need to be a coding expert. I don't need to be, brilliant with the actual tool, but it helps if in my function to be thinking, hey, AI could help me, with my customers. I could start consolidating feedback. I can solicit from my customers. I can do this, I can do that. How can this new technology enhance the function that I'm responsible for?
Yeah. And, your whole approach, something that I really appreciate that I don't hear enough of from other recruitment firms that I speak to is you bring this like discipline and rigor to talent development and talent strategy that a CFO might have for financials. It's this combination of being measurement driven, quantifiable, but also having the human side of it. How important is that? Maybe if you can share a story of where companies don't do that as much, maybe they rely too much on the qualitative and where that might have burned them. And what does that balance look like? You touched on it a bit, but what does that balance look like between the rigor as well as the qualitative and the feel side of it?
Well, it's funny. My co-author used to beat me up the head because I came up with a quote after we wrote the book, and it just drove him nuts that the great thought comes after. But I said, you should be treating your human capital with the same discipline, rigor, and focus that you do your financial capital.
Yeah.
That's number one. That's really what we should be doing. And to your question about how are companies doing, and I would say poorly, generally. And I've seen it across a very wide spectrum. And anybody that sees this has probably been in a quarterly business review and prepared for one. And there are sometimes 50 slides, sometimes 150 slides. And they're about sales, they're about marketing, they're about engineering, they're about product development, they're about all the specialized projects. And then at the very end, you squeeze in this little tiny piece about your people.
Right. Yeah.
Forgetting that your people are driving the rest of this. And so I think companies have it backwards. So to your point about, first of all, they just need to put a focus on it. Even if you can't bring a ton of data to the table, you need to be invested in your people. you need to be investing in them. We have people that want to hop around a lot. Attrition is an issue with the younger generation. They're job hopping, but they'll stay if they have people that are invested in them. So leaders have to put the focus on their people and developing their people. Now, then use the tools to start gathering, hey, who are our top performers? Hey, look at our hiring. Where have we kind of missed? When we've had people that come in and not been successful, are there any commonalities there? How do we make our company stronger? Because any company you join, this is the way I put it in simple terms to people. Anybody that's accepted a role, executive level all the way to entry level, the job description you hired into, how long was that job description applicable?
Right.
I think the longest answer I've had is 6 months.
Yeah.
The
right.
longest answer I've had. So the point being is you have to understand what that talent is, and you have to invest in those people, because what you hire them for, your company, your product, your service is all going to change. And you need that adaptability, that potential, and that talent to work for you.
What do you think, if you could boil it down to 3 things that keep a talent happy, engaged, and fulfilled in their work, as well as the people they work with? What 3 things should a company leader make sure to do?
First and foremost, great leadership. People do not leave bad companies, they leave bad bosses. That has been true for the longest time. So the stronger and better you can make your leadership that invests and grows people, that's first and foremost. Number 2, and this has grown over time, is autonomy. Giving your people the trust and the autonomy with some guardrails or bumper guards that say, to left and right limits, I'm going to give you the autonomy, to do what you need to do and bring me a result. I'm not going to tell you the how, but I'm going to give you the lane to play in. So autonomy is number 2. And number 3, I think, is ownership. Now, let me distinguish, in a great friend of mine, a brother, Rich Deviney, really explained it better than anybody else. Most leaders want to say, well, I hold people accountable. What we want from our teams and what people want is ownership. They want their left and right limits, but they want to own the task that they've been given or the job that they've been given. And the difference between ownership and holding somebody accountable is accountability is extrinsic. So if you give people, great leadership, you give them autonomy, and you give them ownership of their swim lanes, now you still have to bring them along, and they're going to fail and they're going to succeed. But if you give them those 3 things, you're very well on your way to stronger retention.
Okay. Yeah. I really like that. As we close it up here, a question I'd like to ask is, if you could have a message on a billboard that, is on the 405 or some major highway that executives will see as they drive in and out of work, what message would you put onto a billboard?
Wow, it was one of those 2 quotes, and I don't know which one I would pick, but you should treat your human capital with the same discipline, rigor, and focus you do your financial capital. That's absolutely first and foremost that I would tell them. And then maybe the last thing is, as a leader, as a CEO, they're not going to remember you as the boss of the company. They're going to remember you.
Yeah.
So build a legacy of leadership. Build and invest in people that are going to succeed because of what you gave them well after you're gone. People will always remember that. And if you can build a legacy of leadership, you're going to have great retention, far better results in your competition, and you're going to stay ahead of your competition.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of the Maya Angelou quote, where people don't remember what you said or whether you're right or wrong. They remember how you made them feel. Yeah,
exactly. And my success, I stand on the shoulders of so many people who invested a lot of patience and a lot of their time and knowledge in both mentoring and coaching me. And so it's my obligation to pass that along as well. And I think that's every leader's obligation, is to make their people better.
Yep. Well, George, this has been such a wide-ranging and valuable conversation. We have, thousands of CEOs, business owners, and leaders that are actively growing their company. If they were to, want to engage you and bring some of this rigor and discipline to their people management, what would be like one of the first things that you would help them with? What would that first consultative call look like, so they can get a sense of what it might be like to work with you?
The first thing, well, they could reach me at my email address, george@randallpartnersllc.com. But my first consultative conversation is, what is it that you need? What are your pain points? What does success look like? What's missing in your world that I can help you deliver when it comes to talent and people and assessments and coaching and mentoring? What will make your life easier? Because my whole job is about my client's success. I don't make decisions with a calculator. Our firm doesn't make decisions with a calculator. It's the client's success. So that's what the focus of every one of my questions is. What is going to get me somebody to present to you that's going to multiply your success for you?
Yeah, I love that. Enabling their success. So we'll make sure to include the website, your LinkedIn profile, your email in the show notes. Is there anywhere else you might want to direct folks to check out?
I would connect me with LinkedIn. I'm starting to post a lot of articles about how you can interview better, how you define success, but please connect with me on LinkedIn. I pretty OCD and connect with everybody and answer almost every question that comes across.
Perfect. Well, George, thank you so much for joining the podcast today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.